In the Hawaiian Islands, miles from the tourist haven of Waikiki, stands a unique treasure that early critics believed would never survive. When it opened in 1963 in the small town of Laie, one Hawaiian newspaper called it simply a flop.
If you were to do an analysis of where you would build a major tourist attraction, that probably would be the last place you'd build it.
People in Honolulu, they call us crazy because they thought nobody will come here.
To travel an hour over a windy road to see a school put on a pageant, and the name of the school is Church College of Hawaii. You know, it didn't have all the bells and whistles that traditional entertainment would have.
Now, more than 30 million visitors later, the Polynesian Cultural Center is the #1 paid tourist attraction in all of Hawaii. And the headlines tell a very different story.
That same newspaper that indicated that this would be a flop reversed and said, well, the flop that flipped, and now concede that the Polynesian Cultural Center has become the most successful entity representing all of Hawaii.
Hawaii is one of the most geographically isolated places in the world, perched in the center of our largest ocean, more than 2,000 miles from the nearest continent. It is also one of the most culturally diverse places, with immigrants representing so many different countries that no single ethnic group claims a majority of the population. How one of the most remote places on the planet ended up with the whole world on its doorstep is a story as colorful and compelling as the island's dramatic landscapes. About 1,500 years ago, the first Hawaiian settlers arrived by canoe from other islands in the South Pacific. Captain Cook discovered Hawaii for the Western world in 1778, and soon after, whaling ships and other seafaring adventurers arrived. Next came Christian missionaries from Europe and America, who built churches and schools and translated the Bible into Hawaiian. As whaling declined and the sugar and pineapple industries prospered, huge plantations created a need for laborers and drew thousands of immigrants from China, Japan, Portugal, the Philippines, and other South Pacific islands. A beautiful cultural mosaic took form in Hawaii, which today gives the islands a distinctly exotic flavor. Nowhere is this diverse mosaic more richly demonstrated than at the Polynesian Cultural Center, a major tourist attraction that showcases 7 different Polynesian cultures, with employees representing more than 70 different countries. The Polynesian Cultural Center is located on the island of Oahu, which has been called the gathering place. Oahu is indeed a gathering place, with more than 70% of Hawaii's population centered in or near Honolulu. The Polynesian Cultural Center sits on the opposite side of the island, along Oahu's famous North Shore, in the small town of Laie, which is also a gathering place.
Laie is called the gathering place. And the reason it's called that is missionaries of our church have used that designation since 1865 when we moved here.
For the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Laie, Hawaii has been a spiritual gathering place an educational gathering place, and a cultural gathering place for more than a century. The church built not only the Polynesian Cultural Center, but also the temple and the university that preceded it. Only a few years after the LDS Church was organized on the mainland, missionaries were sent to preach the restored gospel of Jesus Christ in the Pacific Islands. On December 12, 1850, 10 LDS missionaries arrived in Honolulu, and the following morning hiked to an area above the city that is now called Pacific Heights. There they prayed, sang hymns, and dedicated the islands for the preaching of the gospel. One of the missionaries, Elder George Q. Cannon, was fortunate to meet an important and influential man, a Hawaiian judge named Jonatana H. Napela, who joined the church and helped Elder Cannon translate the Book of Mormon into Hawaiian. Brother Napela became a great church leader in Hawaii and established the first language training school for LDS missionaries in the Pacific. A statue in Laie honors Brother Napela and Elder Cannon. The early missionaries in Hawaii encountered many challenges, but the church grew quickly, and soon Hawaiians were called on missions to preach the gospel to their own people. By 1854, just 4 years after the first missionaries arrived, there were more than 50 LDS branches organized in Hawaii, with about 4,000 members. Similar success was seen in other areas of the Pacific. Over the years, LDS missionaries taught and baptized thousands of converts in the islands originally featured in the villages of the Polynesian Cultural Center, Tonga, Tahiti, Samoa, Fiji, New Zealand, and Hawaii. The message of the restored gospel of Jesus Christ resonated with the Polynesian people, who found it in harmony with many of their traditional beliefs.
You don't have to listen too hard to find that intertwined in the cultural fabric of Polynesians is a closeness to important things, spiritual things, historical things, linkage with ancient scripture, modern day scripture.
When I read the Book of Mormon and I see what it says, where, the Lord says that he preserved his righteous seed on the isles of the sea, I believe in my heart that my people from the islands of Hawaii were part of that seed.
As church membership increased in Hawaii and other Pacific islands, a gathering place was needed. On the mainland, Brigham Young declared Salt Lake City a gathering place for saints who came to settle there from all over the world. The gathering place chosen for Hawaii, and eventually all of Polynesia, was Laie.
Brigham Young said, follow, we go. This is the right place in Salt Lake City. And this is the same thing.
I think the Lord has his hand from the very beginning on this place.
In 1865, the LDS Church purchased a 6,000-acre plantation on the north shore of Oahu, where church members could gather to live, work, and worship together. As the years passed, both the plantation and the community grew. But it wasn't until the LDS Church built a temple there that saints from all over Polynesia traveled to Laie in large numbers, some for temporary visits to the temple, and others to settle there permanently. The Laie Hawaii Temple, completed in 1919, was the first LDS temple built outside of the continental United States. Just 2 years after the temple was dedicated, Elder David O. McKay, an apostle who later became president of the church, visited Laie during a worldwide tour of church missions and schools. While in Laie, he witnessed a flag-raising ceremony at the local elementary school.
What touched President McKay in that flag-raising ceremony back in 1921 when he visited Laie was all these young children of many different ethnic backgrounds coming together and saluting the flag. But it wasn't the patriotic nature of their salute that touched him, but the fact that this was a church school and the gospel of Jesus Christ would unite the races of the world.
That experience inspired Elder McKay to envision an international college in Laie, which would provide a gathering place for higher education in the Pacific. He visited Hawaii several times during the next few decades, and each time spoke of the international college he hoped to one day see established there. In 1951, David O. McKay was sustained as president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and immediately set about implementing a plan for the college in Laie. It was decided that a portion of the church's land near the temple would be dedicated for the new college. At the groundbreaking ceremony, President McKay spoke of his vision, not just for the new college, but for all of Laie, when he boldly proclaimed that not thousands, not tens of thousands, but millions of people would come to Laie seeking to know its significance. The idea that millions of people would be drawn to such an unassuming little town was difficult to comprehend. In 1955, the total number of people visiting all of Hawaii each year was barely over 100,000.
I was here then. There was nothing here. There was a little store. There were no buses. There were very few people owned cars. There were a few houses and, of course, the temple. But there was nothing else. We were miles from anything.
President McKay wanted the college to be built immediately.
He didn't want to wait for it. He wanted it now. You know, they said, oh, we can't do it that quickly. Can we do it in 2 years? And he says, no, by 1955, do it.
Surplus World War II buildings were brought in as temporary classrooms, and on September 26, 1955, just 7 months after the groundbreaking, the Church College of Hawaii opened its doors to 153 students and 20 faculty members. The new college was immediately successful, drawing students from Hawaii and many other Pacific islands. But student employment soon became a serious problem. Local jobs were scarce in Laie, and during the summers many students had difficulty earning enough money for school. Many international students couldn't come to Laie at all without financial assistance.
They needed help. They needed jobs. Somebody had to figure out how these young people could put themselves through school.
And this is where I believe that the Polynesian Cultural Center really got started, when the brethren began to realize, hey, we've got to find employment for these students. There was no other place out here for them to be employed.
To solve the student employment problem, leaders decided that a cultural entertainment center should be built where students could earn money for school by helping to preserve and share the ancient cultures of Polynesia. The result was the Polynesian Cultural Center. Today, millions of people come from all over the world to experience Hawaii's acclaimed Polynesian Cultural Center. As visitors make their way along the waterways and lush tropical paths, 42 acres of cultural treasures unfold before them. Considering the Polynesian Cultural Center's phenomenal success, it is difficult to imagine a time when the center existed only as a dream in the minds and hearts of those who built it. Among the hundreds of people who helped plan and build the center, 3 early leaders emerged who shaped nearly every facet of its development: Matthew Cowley, Von Clissold, and Wendell Mendenhall. Matthew Cowley was a church apostle who was the first to propose the concept of building a Polynesian village in Laie. Elder Cowley had spent much of his adult life as a missionary and a mission president among the Maori people of New Zealand. He had a great love for the Polynesian people, and they loved and respected him in return. The Maoris called him Tumuwaki, meaning great leader or big chief. In 1951, speaking at a church conference in Honolulu, Elder Cowley said,
I hope to see the day when my Maori people down there in New Zealand will have a little village at Laie with a beautiful carved house. The Tongans will have a village there, and also the Tahitians, all of these islanders of the sea.
Elder Cowley's vision was for a hospitality center where church members could stay while attending the temple in Laie, and where native crafts could be sold to help offset travel costs. Elder Matthew Cowley did not live to see his ideas take form. He died unexpectedly just 2 years later at the age of 56. Edward Levon Clissold was a prominent church and civic leader who managed the church's land holdings in Laie. He had a quiet but commanding presence, and, like Matthew Cowley, believed in the concept of building Polynesian villages and became determined to make it happen. Wendell B. Mendenhall was chairman of the church building committee and was appointed by President David O. McKay to oversee the building of both the Church College of Hawaii and the Polynesian Cultural Center.
Wendell was very close to President McKay, and when President McKay died, half of the buildings standing in the church had been built under his administration, and I think the majority, if not all of them, under Wendell Mendenhall's supervision. Wendell was a single-minded man, and you better stay out of his way, because he was going to get it done.
Mendenhall and Clissold did get the center done, with the help of legions of supporters over the years, but not without considerable opposition. Some believed the cultural center would exploit rather than preserve the Polynesian cultures. Others were concerned about the financial viability of such an undertaking.
The adversary was, I think, determined to stop it in any way that he could, but it could not be stopped.
Construction on the center began in 1962, but was delayed when concerns were raised about the location, a 15-acre site between the college and the temple.
We started the center there first. We got everything ready, the lagoon was in, and then we got a word from Salt Lake not to put it there because it's too close to the temple. And I think that was the best thing that whoever received the revelation to do that was from somebody right.
President McKay asked 2 church leaders from Salt Lake City to evaluate the location, Elders Delbert L. Stapley and Gordon B. Hinckley. They recommended that the site be moved to an area along the highway where the center stands today.
You could stand in one place and see all the villages because there were no trees. This used to be a taro patch.
It was a pretty barren place. It looked like North Dakota with a few little palm trees. And then we started seeing it gradually happen. It started to take shape, and the form of it came together with the water in the lagoon and the houses and everything, and they had to bring in all the trees.
All these coconut trees, and they were all transplanted, but it was beautiful.
One of the most unique aspects of the center's construction was its workforce. Labor missionaries were called on full-time missions to do the building. Many had come to Laie to build the church college and stayed on to build the cultural center as well.
When they called, they came. They just came. I mean, say if you thought about it, you didn't come. But those guys made the difference. They made up their minds and they came.
Our labor missionary force there were 31 Tongans, there were 22 Samoans, there were 12 Maoris from New Zealand that came.
They all came to Tafuna to board the plane to come to Hawaii. And that started the dream for me. Brother Feng and Brother Mohitau and Tuiono and all those guys, we all came together here.
When we heard that labor missionaries came, we came to visit them. And we were so excited to see people from Samoa and Tonga and New Zealand.
We learn practically everything from the building, from the ground up.
Wendell B. Mendenhall said of the labor missionary program,
"There has been nothing in the history of the church that has built the kingdom of God more rapidly than this program."
You know, when you have a brother and a sister, that's pretty close in the family, no? Well, that's how it's been with these guys.
That we feel that, that we fulfill what we came here to do.
And if there's another project later on, we're ready to go again.
Many, including members of the Laie community, volunteered countless hours to build the center.
We worked very hard before the PCC opened and pick up the stone, or helping to fix up all those weavings, the curtains of the buildings. That was a job. Really work hard, and we all work hard. We didn't even think we get paid or anything. No, we donate all our time. People that live here in Laie all donate, even the old folks.
My grandma and my grandpa, they used to weave the mats and things for the outside of the PCC over here in those days. Practically, they spent the whole day here. And I find it very authentic what we learned from the old people.
The Polynesian Cultural Center became a cultural gathering place. Each of the villages had elders who had come from the islands. Many of them were called to serve there, much like the labor missionaries. Their calling was to preserve and share the ancient cultures of Polynesia.
We've had some people here that have learned from some of the greats, and you often wonder what's going to happen when they're gone. Who's going to take their place?
Building the Polynesian villages was only part of the plan for the cultural center. Another important part was the entertainment. Early leaders decided to combine the Polynesian village idea with performances and a luau. They patterned the entertainment after another community program that had been running successfully in Laie for several years. The Hukilau. The Hukilau idea was sparked by a community disaster. Workers using a blowtorch to strip paint from the historic Hemolele Chapel accidentally burned down the building. Members decided to stage a hukilau to raise funds for a new chapel. A hukilau is a fishing celebration. Ropes with coconut leaves attached are cast into the water and pulled in by the whole village. The movement of the leaves draws the fish into nets waiting near the shore. In Hawaiian, huki means to pull, and lau means leaves.
The tourists come in and they pull those ropes with the leaves attached to them. And so they're hooking the lau.
The hukilau experience included a luau, traditional entertainment, and native crafts. Tourists were charmed by the authenticity.
And we have to cook the food, make the kalua pig and all that for them to eat. And we work very hard too. That's all we have, the only people in Laie. We didn't have any extra people from here or there. So we all do the things, the same thing, cook the food, jump over here, jump to get ready to dance.
After I finished dancing in my group, I came and helped the ladies to make leis and to make hats and bowls out of the coconut leaf.
There was always have the aloha spirit for everyone. They all worked together.
A lot of tourists came, and it was very successful. One of the Hawaiian songwriters wrote a hukilau song. It became the most popular song in all of Hawaii at that period and out in the world, because the ships coming in used it as their song to teach passengers the hula. Oh, we're going to a hukilau, a hooky, 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 hukilau.
Everybody loves a hukilau, where the laulau is the kaukau at the big luau. We throw our nets out into the sea hooky, 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 hooky la.
The hukilau ran successfully for more than a decade. It proved one very important thing. There was something in Laie that tourists were willing to come all the way from Honolulu to experience. Many who directed and performed in the hukilau went on to play an important role in developing the cultural center's entertainment.
Aloha! Aloha! Welcome to the Polynesian Culture Center.
Thank you.
Often visitors say there is a special spirit at the Polynesian Cultural Center that is difficult to describe, but impossible to ignore.
They don't know always how to describe the feelings, but they're warm and they're wonderful. They say that they wish that they could find some way to package them up or put them in a bottle or something and bring them home with them.
But we're like the number 1 or 2 word-of-mouth experience on the island. In other words, when people go to the cultural center, they tell all their friends to go.
Well, it's actually her second time here, my first time.
This is my second part. I told him this is great, and I'm glad they still keep the spirit there.
Everybody that comes through that gate, I think they can feel our spirit because we love and appreciate people.
Aloha.
The people who work here are trying to develop the kind of relationship in an instant with a guest that could be coming here from anywhere in the world. And what they want to do is to share enough about who they are and about what their culture is that is so unique and so special that they create a bond with that person. And they do it literally in an instant.
All right, how many of you are ready to do some hula? We're going to do some hula lessons right around.
The Polynesian Cultural Center is staffed primarily by university students who come from all over the world to attend the nearby college, which in 1974 changed its name to Brigham Young University, Hawaii. The students are trained and mentored by seasoned professionals.
We make them understand, first and foremost, who they are, who they represent. You may be one student in the Tongan village, but to all of these people that come from all over the world, you represent that entire culture, that entire nation. That is how important you are.
Māoris have a term called a tūranga waiwai, a place of standing. You have to know where you stand, where you come from, in order to stand strong.
More than 14,000 students have worked, danced, demonstrated, and served their way through school by working at the Polynesian Cultural Center. For many, a university education would have been impossible without that help.
I worked to PCC and then go to BYU, Hawaii. And so I see that my tuition is being paid through that means. And so PCC is helping me, to be in school. And that alone, it's a great opportunity for me. Because I know from where I'm from, I won't be able to pay, such an amount.
I work in the Hawaiian village at the Polynesian Cultural Center, and I've learned more about the traditions. I've learned several dances. I teach the hula as well.
It's really great to have friends all different kind of countries and cultures and know and learn about their cultures, and it's really precious gift.
Where else can you find literally students from not just Polynesia? Yes, we represent Polynesia, but we actually have students from 70 different countries that are working here.
They come into this place and they mix with so many different cultures, and they learn from each other.
Even our coconut tree climbers, maybe one will come each year that actually knew how to climb a coconut tree in Samoa. The rest learned here at the Cultural Center. They got their scars and their bruises and their scrapes here as they learned.
Before I came here, my vision was so small, and now I have a larger vision of everything.
Even those that came with some knowledge of their culture, they didn't have a full appreciation of it until they came here, and I guess saw how others, our visitors, enjoyed it and responded to it so positively that they became excited about learning and perpetuating it.
I learned how to do little hula dancing, and I took some pictures with my hula dress on, and people took pictures of me, and me and my husband did a war dance and things. It's great, and it's good for the kids too, and for us, because now I know how to crack a coconut. That's important.
I love the New Zealand war dance too. That was great.
There are scholars out there that criticize PCC because it's part of a tourist culture. And that's true, it is. But it is more than that. The tourists who come in, for just a day's visit have a wonderful time with the outward display of the cultures, the performances and so on. They can see the buildings, but they really don't understand the significance of them culturally.
To take a look at some of these huts, you just think of what it took to tie those thatchings to the roof. And every one of them, originally we used the senet.
What's hold up all those things? Not the nail, it's the senet rope. Senet rope that holds up everything in that building.
All of the senet that was used in all of those was woven right here on the grounds.
We had some of the elders sitting on the side taking the fibers from the coconut husk and just braiding them together, inch by inch, braiding them. And you look next to them, they had these big, huge rolls, miles and miles and miles of senet. I often wonder how many miles of senet does it take to lash one of these huts.
You know, all these plants that you see here, they're not planted here just for decorations. They have purposes. That's where the mats are made from, skirts, and the covering of our floor.
I remember when we'd go out and cut all of these long poles of hau, the wild hibiscus, and they'd be soaking in the lagoon. When you pull them out of the water, that fragrance just fills the air, and everybody's wondering, what in the world is that? Well, we needed those to make our skirts.
They made top cloth from raising the mulberry trees, soaking the bark, pounding it in the village, taking the breadfruit bud, manufacturing the dyes, and drawing. The whole process was done right here.
Some of the greatest artisans were right here on our property. This place was built by the hands and sweat of people.
Throughout its history, the center has remained focused on preserving traditional Polynesian culture by being as authentic as possible.
Culture is something that's always evolving. What we do today in the Cultural Center, some would say is probably more contemporary than what was done in, 40 years ago. The same can be said in any of the Polynesian islands. When I went back to Samoa last year and saw the cultural festival which they had, not one single group used stringed instruments to play with. Everything was an electronic keyboard. So in that sense, we're more traditional here at the Cultural Center than the islands themselves.
They've had a number of high-ranking leaders from Pacific nations here. Ratu Mara, the Prime Minister of Fiji, is one. The Maori Queen has been here. The Malietoa from Samoa, and different others. And whenever somebody of that high authority culturally comes to PCC, PCC is always able to welcome them in the correct way, in the traditional way, with the exact things in place that are required by the culture to be in place.
One of the most popular cultural experiences at the Polynesian Cultural Center is the night show.
Let's have a big round of applause for our dancers from the Kingdom of Tonga, fabulous New Zealand, exotic Tahiti, exciting Samoa, beautiful Fiji, our islands of Hawaii.
Song and dance is in the Polynesian people. You can't take that away from them.
Those brought in to oversee the night show were master teachers with years of experience. Sally Moana Keala Wood directed the Hawaiian section. To take her new position at the center, Auntie Sally gave up her private hula studio, which at the time was the largest in Hawaii.
She had the spirit, she had the mana of a glorious woman who was the leader of the Hawaiian group. But she sort of became the figurehead over all the entertainers.
Erena Mapuhi led the Tahitian section. At a very young age, she had been declared the best dancer in Tahiti. Mike Grillikis, husband of LDS film star Lorraine Day, was asked to manage all of the entertainment at the center. Mike was an award-winning producer and director who had just finished a 9-year run at CBS television. Mike brought in Jack Regis, a professional dancer and choreographer who had worked with such legendary stars as Judy Garland, Jack Benny, and Andy Williams.
I came over here only to give it a format, the show a format, and maybe lighting and entrances and exits. I never wanted to change the culture whatsoever. All I was doing was saying, maybe instead of staying in a block the whole time, if we could just move around and do maybe this and maybe do a little of that, and instead of just running on and off the stage, maybe if we could dance on and have the next group dancing on behind them, whatever. It was just doing a format for the show, of which it has stayed to this day.
And there was some criticism. Well, you ought to be more professional. You ought to have professional entertainers. You ought to have the Waikiki type show. That would be the death knell of the center if that were to happen. They would lose the very purpose of the center.
In New Zealand, a group calling themselves Te Aroha Nui Maori, which means the great love of the Maori people, was so determined to perform at the center's grand opening that they pledged to pay all of their own expenses to be there.
There was a glorious quality to this group, and they struggled, a lot of those people, to come here. They had a hard time financing it, but it was a miraculous thing all by itself.
The Te Aroha Nui Maori Company made it to Hawaii and also staged a successful mainland tour. They played to sell-out crowds at the Hollywood Bowl and appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show. The company performed at the Cultural Center's opening day ceremonies and was part of the original night show. Every 10 years, a reunion is held in Laie to remember and celebrate the dream that became the Polynesian Cultural Center.
Brings a lot of memories, how we work hard for this center to bring the center what it is today.
It is truly a miracle, to feel the great reunion, the feeling of reunited with people that you once had rubbed shoulder with and cried with and laughed with.
I don't know of any other company. I don't know if Sears or Ace Hardware has a reunion and people come from all over the world because they worked at Ace Hardware or but they do here.
At the last reunion, a parade filled the streets of Laie as 4 generations of alumni gathered to celebrate both the past and the future.
Aloha! It's a great day in Laie.
The alumni show was a highlight of the reunion. Alumni joined the current night show cast for a dazzling display of song and dance. Preparing for the alumni performance was challenging.
Some of the movements are now very difficult to do because it requires bending down and kneeling down and standing up, and with arthritis getting over you now, you just can't do that anymore. But we have been practicing, and the more we practice and the more he drives us, he said, you gotta go exercise. You gotta go we can't have to bring a forklift to lift you up. You gotta have to get up on your own. So it's been fun.
One of the most popular numbers performed that night was a traditional favorite that has been performed at the center since its opening in 1963. The Joseph Smith Laka Laka. Written and choreographed in Tonga by Tevita Mulikinikini, the Joseph Smith Laka Laka tells an important part of LDS Church history through song and dance. The Laka Laka tells the story of a young man named Joseph Smith, who founded the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Joseph was confused by the religious teachings of his time and sought heavenly guidance to find out which church he should join. At their last reunion, many still remembered and talked about how difficult it was during the early days of the center.
We were lucky if 10 people went through the village a day. It was spooky. There were many times that when we did the show at night, we'd have 150 people on stage and we'd have 25 in the audience.
Our sales and marketing was basically our people.
We used to run to the front and wave, hello, we are here, please come. They keep going.
We had to learn about the tour and travel business and how it operated. We were being squeezed by the tour operators, and they came in initially asking for enormously high commissions.
And it wasn't a good idea for the tourist industry at that time for people to leave Waikiki, because when they go, they take their pocketbooks with them.
We were struggling and learning things that had never been done before. Nobody had ever done a cultural center before.
Just 1 year after opening, it looked like the center would have to be closed due to financial difficulties.
They called us to come into a meeting, and we came into the meeting, and they told us the whole story about the closing of the Polynesian Cultural Center's gate.
I remember very well the people that were there. Maunga Tapusof represented the Samoan village. Joseph Changayo of the Maori village of New Zealand. Israeli Rakuli from Fiji. Jubilee Logan, Hawaiian village. Tahina Tapu of the Tahitian village. And Emeline Unga of the Tongan village.
We all knew the Polynesian Cultural Center was built for a purpose, for the benefit of our children from the South Pacific that cannot afford to go through school.
We had a word of prayer, and then Les Hawthorne informed them that we have some bad news. We're not going to meet the next payroll. And the first one to stand up was Jubilee Logan. He said, if we cannot meet the next payroll, or the next payroll, or the next payroll, we'll be here. The Lord built this place, and He's not going to close it. And then Maunga Tapusoa stood up, echoed the same thing. Every one of them.
The center survived the financial crisis and then launched an aggressive public relations campaign. Celebrity visits brought welcome publicity and raised the center's profile worldwide. The center hosted Kirk Douglas, Jane Powell, Henry Fonda, Art Linkletter, Steve Allen, and many other well-known public figures. One celebrity stayed for a while, Elvis Presley. He came to film the movie Paradise Hawaiian Style. Mike Grillikis negotiated the center's contract with Paramount, and the center's theme song, Bula La'ie, became a point of serious discussion.
I got a call from Hal Wallace, who was the head of Paramount. So I went in and negotiated with him, and I said there are going to be certain conditions, and he said, like such as, and I said, like such as, that anybody depicted on the film as being associated with the center has to be dressed and act according to our standards. We got that down, and then they said, oh, you know that song, Bula La'ie? Elvis would like to use that. I said, well, fine, we can put that in the contract. And he said, well, no, Elvis owns all his music. And I said, well, he's not going to own this. This was composed by Israeli Rathuli, and he should get compensated for it when it's used. So we went around and round on that, and it finally came down to my saying, hey, you want to use the center? This is the condition. The song has got to be Israeli, and they finally agreed.
Then my father said that they could use it only if they show his name at the end of the credits, and they did that. It always made me feel proud of my father.
Elvis Presley was very well liked by the students. While he was relaxing between the scenes, he would get a ukulele and just sit with the students and just talk stories and sing some Hawaiian songs.
At the end, we had a big party in the Murray house, and we gave him the Book of Mormon. I remember that.
If you're familiar with the custom, all the villages would sing their goodbye song to him, and as they did it, they would put leis on him. Well, by the end of the evening, Elvis had leis like this. He was just laden down with them. And as you know, they can be very hot. They're very hot when you're in it. And we got in the limo to go back to Waikiki where he was staying at the hotel. And one of his guys went like this to take the leis off and said, let me take it off. He went, don't touch them. And he had tears running down his eyes. He said, I'm wearing them all the way home. And he did. He loved the Polynesian Cultural Center.
In looking back over his experiences with the Polynesian Cultural Center, Vaughn Clissold astutely observed,
we had dreams, and they had limits, but the realization has extended far beyond the dream.
The center's opening day ceremonies were attended by dignitaries and other special guests who traveled thousands of miles to be there. The LDS Church was represented by President Hugh B. Brown, who cut the lei to symbolize the beginning of a new cultural era. In his dedicatory speech, he offered a glimpse of the important role the Polynesian Cultural Center would play in bringing peace to a troubled world.
We're living in a time when what is happening here today and what will happen here in months to come
could very well be incorporated into the international relationships that are presently so troublesome, so fraught with peril, so uncertain. If the people of all nations would come to feel what these groups feel now and have felt through the years, that is a feeling of love and brotherhood, I'm sure we would have world peace.
What we're trying to do is to build upon that spirit, the foundation of those who have gone before, so that we can be an example to the entire world of what's really possible.
And I realize now, looking back, that you can't change what the Lord wants done here. You just can't do it. You can make it look good. You can make it look better. You can show that you're convinced that it's right. You can do all these things, but you want to keep it tight. You want to keep it the way President McKay saw it, and he probably saw the whole thing.
David O. McKay did have a vision for Polynesia. When he dedicated the land for the college in 1955, he spoke of the kind of students who would come to Laie.
He said that they would be the kind of people that the world would be hungering for. He described them as pure gold, in fact, people of integrity that couldn't be bought or sold, who would help to go out into the world and establish peace in a world that very desperately needed peace.
When he envisioned that there would be a school here, and that this school will help students to prepare themselves to be leaders and to go out to establish international peace, be an influence for good wherever they go. I cannot tell you how grateful I am to President McKay.
Many who were there in 1955 remember hearing the words of a prophet who said not thousands, not tens of thousands, but millions of people would one day come to Laie.
I was one of those primary children lined up in front, and I remember standing in line holding those sleighs while the president passed through. I can recall, when he said that this place was going to be a gathering place. I just can't believe how true the church is, and then the revelation from the prophet. I mean, I read about all the other revelations, but I didn't see it. But this I saw. I heard it when I was a child, and now I'm older. I see everything fall in place.
This tiny town, this tiny island in the middle of the sea, but millions come, and millions are touched by those who go out from here.
There's a very strong encouragement for them to get their education, prepare for the future, prepare to be leaders, and then to go back to their homelands and be those kinds of leaders that President McKay and President Brown were talking about. That's the encouragement.
They come here and study, have the academic studies, go back to various countries, and not only help the government, help the church, and they are the future of every place.
I would say that this is like a training ground where young men and young women like me comes to be trained and go out prepared to face the challenges of life.
At the Polynesian Cultural Center's 40th anniversary celebration, Gordon B. Hinckley, president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, spoke of the unique place Laie holds in the church and in the world.
My beloved brethren and sisters, how grateful I am to be with you on this occasion. To stand on this historic ground, we have here something that we have nowhere else in all the world. We have the beautiful temple, Brigham Young University, Hawaii, and we have the Polynesian Cultural Center. They work together. There is nothing quite like it in so small an area, really, that we have anywhere else in the world. This is a favored and beautiful and wonderful area.
The future of BYU Hawaii and the Polynesian Cultural Center, the temple in Laie, we haven't begun. The accents of love that emanate from this place will truly embrace millions and billions in the world.